I'm Peter Okwacha. Welcome to Focus on Africa. Our top stories. Could this be the breakthrough the world has been waiting for? A pilot of a one-of-a-kind malaria vaccine rolls out in Malawi. As protests continue, Sudan's new military ruler speaks exclusively to the BBC about life after President Bashir.
We respect the Sudanese Professionals Association as we respect other sections of society. As soon as there is consensus, today or tomorrow, we would hand over power.
Ready for takeoff in Uganda, the first 2 aircraft arrive in Entebbe as the country's airline prepares to relaunch. Comedy or controversy, Nigeria's Bovi sits down with us to share how his stand-up material has changed over the years.
There are jokes I told 8 years ago that I wouldn't do now, simply because I'm a grown man, simply because I understand better.
And in sports, Pep Guardiola puts an end to those rumors that his Algeria star Riyad Mahrez is unhappy at the club. Thanks for joining us here on Focus on Africa from BBC World News. A new malaria vaccine is being tested in the field for the first time today. It's the culmination of 3 decades of work. $1 billion has gone into developing RTSS in the hope of saving hundreds of thousands of lives. Worldwide, there are 435,000 deaths a year. And according to the World Health Organization, there are 219 million cases of malaria in 2017. Of these, 92% were in Africa. Most of those affected are children, with 1,200 youngsters under 5 years old dying on the continent every single day. Victoria Wahonda reports.
The world could finally be getting closer to winning the fight against malaria. It's all thanks to a new vaccine, the first of its kind, which is undergoing a large-scale pilot in Malawi. The RTSS vaccine works by training the immune system to attack the malaria parasite, with initial testing indicating it reduces cases by 40%. The World Health Organization expects it to be a crucial step in combating the mosquito-borne disease. Children will receive the vaccine in 4 stages before they are 2 years old. The aim is to immunize 120,000 infants to reduce the number of deaths. Currently, a child dies from malaria every 2 minutes. The pilot will roll out to Ghana next week, while Kenya will follow suit in the next weeks. Victoria Wahonda, BBC News.
Well, joining me from Nairobi now is Dr. Rudi Eggers from the World Health Organization. This must be an exciting moment in the life of any malaria specialist. Tell us about it.
Yes, it's hugely exciting for the malaria world. So in fact, for the first time, we've got a vaccine that is effective against malaria. Previously, we have other mechanisms of dealing with malaria, such as bed nets, treatment, etc. But this really is the first time that we've got a vaccine. The vaccine actually does work in 4 out of 10 severe cases of malaria. So if you imagine that you have more than 200 million episodes of malaria, reducing that by 40% is just huge news.
Now, how exactly does this vaccine work? Because there have been false dawns in the past.
Yes, indeed. So the way that the vaccine works is that it develops the immune system of the child to be reactive to the malaria parasite. So it requires that the child gets 4 doses of the vaccine before it's fully effective. And if the child gets those 4 doses before the 2nd year of life, they actually are protected. 40% of the children are protected against severe malaria, and certainly against the life-threatening types of malaria. It is the immune system of the body itself that actually reduces the severeness of the disease.
Now, it's taken over $1 billion to develop. Do we know how much it's going to cost once it hits the market?
I do not have those figures. This is, of course, the development is always the costly part of it. But what we really have to weigh up against that is the huge impact that you can have. If you truly reduce malaria by 40%, that has got a huge impact not only on the individuals that get malaria, but on economies as a whole. If you reduce a disease that is as common as malaria in the African continent, it actually has a huge impact beyond just the individuals that are protected. We don't have the exact figures, but I think the cost effectiveness has been proven.
Now, it's being rolled out today in Malawi for the first time. When will it go all across the continent and indeed to other parts of the world that might need it?
So currently we are in the phased introduction, and 3 countries have been selected for that phased introduction. So that's Malawi, where it started today, Ghana, and then Kenya in the middle of the coming month. This phased introduction will take us 5 years. So the purpose of this introduction is to see if the immunization programs can accommodate this new vaccine. It requires additional visits by mothers, additional health workers, additional work to be done. But it also, one of the big issues is that we want to be quite certain about the safety of this vaccine. The vaccine is considered safe. It's passed the regulatory authorities' requirements for safety, so it's not a vaccine that we are very worried about. But as you roll out a new vaccine, you want to be 100% sure that you don't miss any side effects or adverse effects.
Okay, Dr.
The third
Rudi
thing is we
Eggers
want to
from the World Health Organization, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Now, African leaders meeting in Cairo have agreed to give Sudan's ruling military council 3 months to implement democratic reforms. The decision comes amid pressure for a quick handover of power to civilians and extends a 15-day deadline set by the African Union last week. The Transitional Military Council took over after President Omar al-Bashir was ousted on April 11th. Let's speak to the BBC's Mohamed Hashin, who is in Khartoum for us. Mohamed, what's the significance of this announcement?
It's very significant. It means that the African Union essentially has moved from its the pressure that it was putting on Khartoum to allow the various political actors within Sudan, the Transitional Military Council on one side, and the various allied forces that are under the Change and Freedom Declaration, to have time to negotiate a way out of the deadlock that they have arrived in because the SPA had refused to continue their negotiations with the ruling Transitional Military Council. Today, however, we managed to the BBC managed to have access with General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, the leader of the Transitional Military Council. He spoke to the BBC's Hard Talk, and in it he was very clear that he was awaiting a consensus from the various political parties and that he is ready to hand over power to a civilian government.
لا نريد أن نستمر أصلاً نحن.
We don't want to rule the country at all. We just came to secure the country, not to run it. We respect the Sudanese Professionals Association as we respect other sections of society. As soon as there is consensus, today or tomorrow, we would hand over power.
So that's the leader of Sudan's Transitional Military Council. And Mohamed, what right now is the priority for the TMC?
Well, the Transitional Military Council is very clear that it wants to secure the country, make sure that everything returns back to normalcy in as far as commodities and petrol, the flow of movement, because you have to understand that the capital has been ground to a standstill because of the area occupied by the protesters. But also the fact that he reiterated that it's the protesters' rights to protest, and that he said that they will not attack these protesters or use force to disperse them. However, he made it very clear that they are working on deposing or removing remnants of the former regime. Here's what he had to say.
We are working on dismantling the deep state, but the military council is now functioning with a limited constitutional mandate. So we will do what we can and leave the rest to the coming government.
نعمل ما تيسر ونترك الباقي.
And Mohamed, what about the protesters? Do they seem determined to carry on with their protests?
Yeah, Peter, just a short while ago, while I'm standing here, a group of people came passing me and they were chanting. The SPA is mobilizing. Today a train arrived from the northern city of Adbara, where all these protests started back in 19th December last year. A train arrived into Khartoum from protesters there. They have galvanized the mobilization. They've put out their timetable for the rest of the week. We expect protests tomorrow, and on Thursday we will hear from them more regarding their vision for the transitional period. And as it stands, the status quo means that they will escalate.
Okay, Mohamed Hassan speaking to us live there from Khartoum. Thank you very much. And you can catch up with the full Hard Talk interview with General Abdul Fattah al-Burhan on Hard Talk on Wednesday. Now, let's take a quick look at other stories making headlines across Africa. Police in Nigeria are investigating the deaths of 11 people in the northeastern town of Gombe after a car plowed into a procession celebrating Easter on Sunday. Some reports say the driver, an off-duty security agent, was unhappy that the procession had blocked the road. The procession leader says he drove into the children. Witnesses say the crowd then turned on the driver and beat him and his passenger to death. Ugandan opposition MP Bobby Wine has been placed under house arrest. He was earlier blocked by the police from holding a press conference in the capital, Kampala. He's calling for a general strike in the country and has announced he will challenge longtime President Yoweri Museveni in the 2021 polls. Wildlife officials in Ethiopia say almost 30 hippos have died in the past fortnight in Gibe-Sheleko National Park in the southwest of the country. The cause of their death is still being investigated, but it is believed to be due to either an outbreak of anthrax or a plague of toxic algae. To Libya now, and according to the World Health Organization, at least 264 people have been killed and more than 1,200 wounded in an offensive by military strongman Khalifa Haftar to seize Libya's capital, Tripoli. The UN agency is calling for a temporary cessation of hostilities between Haftar's self-styled Libyan National Army and forces loyal to the internationally recognized government of national accord. Our international correspondent, Ola Guerin, has been to the front lines.
In Tripoli, the spectre of war has returned. Instead of a planned UN peace conference, there's a fight for control of the capital. We were taken to the front lines in the southern suburbs. This is Ain Zara, a key battleground, deserted now except for the defenders of Tripoli. And here they are. Brigade 191. There are resounding echoes of the revolution of 2011. Spot the barefoot volunteers. But they have been holding off General Khalifa Haftar, the military strongman from eastern Libya. Here at this frontline position, there's a very short distance between the two sides. The fighters here are telling us that the nearest of General Haftar's men are less than a mile away. Now, these men are here fighting for the internationally recognised government. They tell us this isn't just a battle for control of Tripoli, this is a fight for the future of Libya. And a short distance away in Martyrs Square, a sea of flags and a chorus of protest. Among the crowds, Malak al-Badri, born and bred in Leeds and now living in Tripoli.
I think Haftar is a war criminal. He's a spitting image of Muammar al-Gaddafi. He's walking into the same footsteps. He says he's going to free Tripoli and then everything's going to be fine, it's going to be safe, but he's just going to be another Muammar al-Gaddafi.
Many here feel abandoned by the international community, but insist they will stand together against the enemy.
I would like to say two words to Haftar. Haftar, these men here, we will break you. There is no way he will take Tripoli. There is no way. There is no way. He will never take it while we're alive. Freedom! Freedom!
The general presents himself as the face of stability here, the man to crush Islamic extremists. Many Libyans don't buy it, but he has support from regional powers. On the streets, protesters fear he could lead their fragile country to all-out war and damage any hope of democracy. Orla Guerin, BBC News, Tripoli.
This is Focus on Africa from BBC World News with me, Peter Okwoche. Still to come on the program, Mimi with the sports. And in tennis, it's a winning start for Tunisia's Malek Jaziri at the Barcelona Open. I am Peter Okwoche. The top story this hour. Malawi could be the scene of a major malaria breakthrough as a pilot of a new vaccine gets underway. The Ugandan government has received 2 aircraft at Entebbe Airport as part of the relaunch of Uganda Airlines. There has been excitement and skepticism in equal measure and arguments over who the airline belongs to and if it will be profitable. The BBC's Jean reports from Entebbe.
It has been 17 years since Uganda last had a national carrier. Government recently purchased 6 planes in a bid to revive Uganda Airlines. Today, 2 Bombardier planes arrived in the country and were received by President Museveni.
By starting an airline, we are going to reduce on the foreign exchange expenditure. Ugandans will be spending money, but spending it in our airline.
The revival comes at a time when regional airlines are struggling financially.
I can't give you the figure right now, but I think it's about up to 4 years, 4 to 5 years that we expect to start making to break even. But also at the same time, remember, we are buying these aircrafts using, we finance them through cash. We are not going to pay any debts.
Uganda Airlines' first flight is expected to take off in July this year. Dear Jean, BBC, Entebbe.
You're watching BBC Focus on Africa. It's now time for some sports. Mimi?
Thank you very much, Peter. We begin with football. The latest score in the delayed Confederation Cup quarter-final, second leg between Sudan's Al Hilal Omdurman and Tunisia's Etoile du Sahel. Is Etoile du Sahel leading 2-1 at the moment? It's just a few minutes left at the moment. The match should have been played over a week ago, but the ongoing political uncertainty in Sudan meant that it had to be moved. It's being played in Suez, Egypt, the stadium that will host some of the Africa Cup of Nations games this summer. Moving to the English Premier League, and there are reports that Algeria international Riyad Mahrez is unhappy at Manchester City, threatening to leave the club due to a lack of game time. Well, City boss Pep Guardiola has shut those rumors down. He said at a press conference earlier that Mahrez isn't going anywhere and is staying put at the club.
Riyad Mahrez will be with us the next season here, and the next one, and the next one.
Have you spoken to him then as well? And he's obviously not happy.
I don't need to speak with him. He will be with us next season. He's a player for us. We are delighted with behavior and the way he played. He knows, and everybody knows, the competition in the squad. But Riyad is not going to move. He's going to stay here.
And have you spoken
He's happy, we are happy.
So he's happy, they're happy. Staying with the English Premier League, it's a battle at the top of the table and as well at the bottom of the table, with the race to finish in the top 4 and a qualification spot for the Champions League next year. On Monday, Chelsea missed a chance to go above Tottenham Hotspur when they drew at home to Burnley. But Spurs, who are in 3rd place, will be hosting Brighton, who are battling relegation. Both sides will be hoping for a win to help their campaign. The other match sees Watford in 8th position take on Southampton, who are trying to avoid the drop. And last week, footballers staged a 24-hour social media boycott, demanding platforms to do more to stop racist abuse. Today, some of the biggest names in sport have come together to call for a fundamental change in how footballing authorities tackle racism and discrimination. African stars such as Yaya Toure and Wilfred Zaha have joined the likes of Raheem Sterling, Vincent Kompany, and Eniola Aluko to give their backing to the manifesto. In tennis, Tunisia's Malik Jaziri is through to the second round of the Barcelona Open. After beating Argentina's Guido Andre Ozzi in 3 sets, he lost the first set 6-7 before coming back and winning the last 2 sets 6-4, 6-2. And that's it, Peter.
Many thanks, Mimi. Thank you very much. Now, let's have a laugh. Or maybe not. Comedy is quite big in Nigeria at the moment, with stand-up comics like Basket Mouth and Oke Bakassi drawing audiences from across the globe. But their brand of comedy can court controversy, with many of them being accused of sexism and insensitivity to other people's way of life. Well, Bovi is one of the biggest names on the scene at the moment. He dropped by our studio earlier today.
My name is Bovi, and I'm an entertainer. And I say entertainer because I do several things, from stand-up comedy to acting to writing to producing.
You sure we're not gonna get kidnapped? I said, no, I'm not sure. She said, what if we get kidnapped? I said, don't worry, I will pay from my back pocket. She said, you mean we're cheap? I said, no, the market don't crash. Check the stock exchange. Kidnap market, not to pay again.
I had been on TV. I had a popular sitcom on TV.
What does H2SO4 represent?
Water in form, please. So people knew me as, oh, that comic actor on TV. So when I got on stage, acceptance was immediate for me. I don't think I really went through the ranks, you know, the way you have to open for somebody and all that. I came on the big stage first time out. That's it. I joke about everything. I joke about absolutely everything, you know? Like, I lost my mom 3 years ago. She was like my best friend, the closest person to me, you know? And I lost her tragically. But I've made jokes about it as well. You know, and despite the fact that it was my own mom and my siblings' mom and all, I had to find a balance, you know. So I think I can joke about anything. I just make sure I don't cross the line and offend people's sensitivities. There are jokes I told 8 years ago that I wouldn't do now, simply because I'm a grown man, simply because I understand better, you know.
Oh, let me call take phone, say, okay, which artist big way, AKA never many? They say, Pato ranking. Hey, yo, Pato, what's up?
I like to push boundaries, right? The entertainment world and politics, right from time. I mean, Reagan was an actor, but then it wasn't so popular having an actor go into politics. Schwarzenegger is an actor, he went into politics and all. But it's becoming more rampant now. A comedian just became president of Ukraine, just won the presidential elections in Ukraine, you know. So I think, I don't think there's any science behind it. I think it's people getting to know themselves more now and understand that they can do anything they're passionate.
Nigerian comic Bovi there. Now, Egypt's Electoral Commission says 88.8% of Egyptian voters have approved constitutional amendments in a referendum. This means President Abdul Fattah al-Sisi can stay in office until 2030 with expanded powers. The amendments will also bolster the rule of the military. That's it on Focus on Africa for today. From me, Peter Okwachi, and the rest of the team. See you soon.